Kim Jong-un has kids that the world isn't supposed to know about. And if you think being born into one of the most powerful families on Earth sounds amazing, think again. Because these children live in constant fear, hidden from the public, and one wrong move could mean they disappear forever. Before we begin, take a moment, like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Right now, somewhere in North Korea, there are children growing up who share the same DNA as one of the world's most ruthless dictators. But they'll never appear on state television. They'll never be celebrated as heirs to the throne. They might not even know who their father really is. These are Kim Jong-un's secret children, and their lives are nothing like what you'd imagine. No royal treatment, no public recognition, just secrecy, danger, and the constant threat of being seen as a problem that needs to be solved permanently. This is the story of what it's really like to be born into the Kim dynasty when you're not supposed to exist. It's darker than you think, and by the end of this, you'll understand why being Kim Jong-un's secret child might be one of the most dangerous positions in the world. Let's start with the basic question. Why would Kim Jong-un even have secret children in the first place? Why hide them? Why not show them off like every other leader does with their kids? Well, to understand that, you need to understand how the Kim dynasty works, because North Korea isn't just a dictatorship, it's a monarchy disguised as a communist state. And like any monarchy, succession matters a lot. The Kim family has ruled North Korea since 1948. Kim Il-sung was the founder. He passed power to his son, Kim Jong-il, and Kim Jong-il passed power to his son, Kim Jong-un. 3 generations, all from the same family, all with absolute power. But here's the thing about absolute power. It attracts threats. From outside the country, sure, but also from inside, from your own family. Throughout history, royal families have been filled with backstabbing, betrayal, and murder. Brothers killing brothers, sons overthrowing fathers, cousins plotting against each other. Because when there's a throne up for grabs, family loyalty goes out the window. And Kim Jong-un knows this. He studied history. He knows what happens when there are too many potential heirs, too many people who think they deserve power, too many threats to his authority. So he's careful, very careful, about who knows what, about who gets recognized, about who gets acknowledged as part of the family. And that's where the secret children come in. Kim Jong-un is believed to have at least 3 children, maybe more, but only one has been seen in public with any regularity, a daughter. Her name is Kim Jue. She started appearing at military events and public functions in 2022. She's being groomed for something. Maybe succession. Maybe just to be a propaganda tool. We don't know yet. But what about the others? What about the children who aren't being paraded around? What about the ones we don't see? They're hidden, kept secret. Not because Kim Jong-un doesn't care about them, but because acknowledging them would be dangerous, for them and for him. Let me explain why. In North Korea, being recognized as a potential heir to the throne is both a blessing and a curse. Sure, you get power, you get status, you get treated like royalty, but you also become a target for rival family members who want the throne for themselves or their children. A target for military officials who might want to control you. A target for foreign intelligence agencies who see you as a potential weakness in the regime. And most dangerously, you become a target for the current leader. Because even if you're his child, if he thinks you're a threat, he won't hesitate to eliminate you. Let me give you an example. Kim Jong-un's older half-brother, Kim Jong-nam. He was once considered the heir to the throne, the oldest son of Kim Jong-il. By traditional standards, he should have been the next leader. But Kim Jong-il decided to pass over Kim Jong-nam and choose Kim Jong-un instead. Why? Because Kim Jong-nam was seen as too soft, too Western. He'd been caught trying to enter Japan on a fake passport to visit Disneyland. He lived in Macau. He gambled. He wasn't the strong, ruthless leader that North Korea needed. So Kim Jong-il picked Kim Jong-un, the youngest son, the one who was more like him, ruthless, strategic,
willing to do whatever it takes to maintain power.
And what happened to Kim Jong-nam? He was exiled, sent away, told to stay out of North Korea. And for years, he lived in exile, under the protection of China. But Kim Jong-un never forgot about him, because as long as Kim Jong-nam was alive, he was a threat. He was a potential rival, a potential figurehead for anyone who wanted to overthrow Kim Jong-un. So in 2017, Kim Jong-nam was assassinated, in broad daylight, at Kuala Lumpur International Airport in Malaysia. Two women walked up to him and smeared VX nerve agent on his face, one of the most toxic substances on Earth. He died within minutes. The women claimed they thought they were part of a prank show. They'd been tricked. But intelligence agencies around the world knew the truth. This was a North Korean hit, ordered by Kim Jong-un, to eliminate a threat, his own brother. That's the reality of being part of the Kim family. Blood means nothing. If you're seen as a threat, you're eliminated. It doesn't matter if you're a sibling, a cousin, or even a child. And that's why Kim Jong-un keeps some of his children secret. Because if they're not acknowledged, they're not threats. They're not rivals. They're just unknown people living unknown lives. But that doesn't mean their lives are safe, or easy, or anything close to normal. So what's it actually like to be one of Kim Jong-un's secret children? What does daily life look like when your father is a dictator, but you're not allowed to tell anyone? First of all, you're isolated, completely isolated. You don't go to regular schools. You don't play with regular kids. You don't have a normal childhood in any sense of the word. You live in a secure compound, probably in Pyongyang, the capital. Maybe in one of Kim Jong-un's many private residences scattered around the country. You're surrounded by guards, servants, handlers, people whose job is to make sure you're safe and, more importantly, secret. You don't have friends your own age, at least not real friends. Anyone you interact with has been carefully vetted, chosen by your father's security team. And they're probably reporting everything you say and do back to their superiors. You're educated, but not in a normal school. Private tutors come to you. They teach you whatever the regime thinks you need to know, which might include propaganda about how great North Korea is, how perfect your father is, how the outside world is evil and dangerous. But here's the twisted part. You might not even know who your father is. Not really. You might be told he's just a high-ranking official, someone important, but not the supreme leader. Because if you knew the truth, you might talk, you might tell someone, and that secret getting out could be dangerous. Or maybe you do know. Maybe you've been told, but you've also been told that you can never, ever tell anyone else, that your life depends on keeping this secret. And in North Korea, that's not an exaggeration. Your life really does depend on it. You don't appear in photos. You don't go to public events. You don't have a normal life where you can just go outside and play. Everything you do is controlled, monitored, restricted. And you live with fear, constant fear, because even if you're just a child, you can sense that something isn't normal. You can feel the tension, the secrecy, the danger. You hear whispers. You see the guards. You notice that people treat you differently, but you're not sure why. And as you get older, you start to piece things together. You start to understand that being born into this family isn't a blessing. It's a curse. Let's talk about the mothers of these secret children, because they're part of this story too, and their lives are just as complicated. Kim Jong-un is married to Ri Sol-ju. She's the First Lady of North Korea. She appears with him at public events. She's elegant, well-dressed, and plays the role of the perfect wife of a dictator. Kim Ju-ae, the daughter who's been seen in public, is believed to be Ri Sol-ju's child. That makes sense. She's the legitimate heir, the acknowledged child, the one who gets to be in the spotlight. But what about the other children, the secret ones? Who are their mothers? This is where things get murky, because Kim Jong-un, like his father and grandfather before him, is rumored to have a pleasure squad, a group of young women, carefully selected for their beauty, who are there to entertain him, to serve him, to do whatever he wants. This isn't just rumor. Defectors from North Korea have talked about this. They've described how the regime recruits young women, sometimes as young as 13 or 14, to join these squads. These women are trained in music, dance, massage, and other skills, the secret. And if they try to escape, if they try to tell someone, they disappear, just like anyone else who threatens the regime. These women live in golden cages. They have wealth, they have comfort, but they have no freedom, no voice, no control over their own lives or the lives of their children. It's a prison. A luxurious prison maybe, but a prison nonetheless. This isn't new. The Kim dynasty has a long history of secret children, hidden relationships, and family members who disappear. Kim Jong-il, Kim Jong-un's father, had multiple wives and mistresses. He had at least 6 known children from different women. But not all of them were acknowledged. Not all of them were treated equally. Kim Jong-nam, the one who was assassinated, was from Kim Jong-il's first wife. But that marriage wasn't officially recognized by North Korea. So Kim Jong-nam was always in a weird position. He was the oldest son, but not the legitimate heir. Kim Jong-chul, another brother, was passed over for succession because Kim Jong-il thought he was too weak, too feminine, not tough enough to lead. So even though he was a legitimate son, he was pushed aside. And then there's Kim Jong-un, the chosen one, the one who got the throne. But even his rise to power wasn't smooth. There were rumors that other family members opposed his succession, that there was infighting, that people disappeared. Kim Jong-un's uncle, Jong Song-thaek, was one of the most powerful men in North Korea. He was married to Kim Jong-il's sister. He was a senior official. He had influence. He had connections. But in 2013, Kim Jong-un had him executed, publicly. He was accused of treason, corruption, and plotting to overthrow the regime. He was stripped of his position, put on trial, and then executed. Some reports say he was killed by anti-aircraft guns. Others say he was fed to dogs. The details are murky, but the message was clear. No one is safe, not even family, not even the most powerful officials. If you're a threat, you're eliminated. And that's the environment these secret children are growing up in, an environment where family loyalty means nothing, where blood ties don't protect you, where one wrong move, one perceived threat, and you're gone. Let's think about what this does to a child psychologically. Growing up knowing you're a secret, knowing you can't tell anyone who you really are, knowing that your very existence is something that has to be hidden. Children need identity. They need to know who they are, where they come from, who their parents are. It's fundamental to psychological development. But these children don't get that. They get secrecy. They get lies. They get a fragmented sense of self because they can't fully know or express who they are. This creates something called identity confusion. You don't have a clear sense of self. You don't know where you fit in the world. You're constantly living a lie, and that eats away at you. And then there's the fear, constant, unrelenting fear, because even as a child, you can sense danger. You can feel that something isn't right. You see the guards, you hear the whispers, you notice that people are afraid of saying certain things around you. Children are perceptive. They pick up on emotional cues. They understand more than adults give them credit for. And growing up in that kind of environment, where fear is constant and secrecy is paramount, that shapes you. It damages you. You might develop trust issues because you can't trust anyone. Everyone around you is either a guard, a handler, or someone who's been placed there to watch you. There's no one you can truly confide in, no one you can be yourself with. You might develop anxiety because you're always worried, always on edge, always wondering if you said the wrong thing, did the wrong thing, if today is the day someone decides you're a problem. You might develop depression because what kind of life is this? You're born into wealth and power, but you can't enjoy it. You can't have friends. You can't have freedom. You can't have a normal childhood. You're trapped in a gilded cage, and there's no escape. And here's the really dark part. You might start to believe that you deserve this, that there's something wrong with you.
that you're a problem, a burden, something that needs to be hidden away. That's what secrecy does to people, especially children. It makes them internalize shame. It makes them feel like they're somehow less than, like they're not worthy of being acknowledged or loved or seen. And that's a psychological scar that never fully heals. Let's talk about the darkest possibility, the one that's hardest to think about but impossible to ignore. What happens if Kim Jong-un decides one of his secret children is a threat? In most families, even dysfunctional ones, parents don't kill their children. That's a line that doesn't get crossed. But the Kim family isn't most families. They've proven, time and time again, that they'll eliminate anyone they perceive as a threat, family or not. Kim Jong-un had his half-brother assassinated. He had his uncle executed. He's purged hundreds, maybe thousands of officials who he thought were disloyal. Some were shot, some were sent to labor camps, some just disappeared. So what's to stop him from eliminating a child he sees as a threat? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Now, you might be thinking, but they're just children. How could they possibly be a threat? But in the world of dictatorships and monarchies, children can be threats. Not because of what they do, but because of what they represent. A child is a potential rival, a potential heir, someone who could be used by others to challenge the current leader's authority. Even if the child has no ambition, no desire for power, they're still a threat simply by existing. Think about it. If there's ever a coup attempt, if there's ever a faction within the military or the government that wants to overthrow Kim Jong-un, they need a figurehead, someone from the Kim family to legitimize their takeover, someone with royal blood. And if Kim Jong-un's secret children become known, they could be that figurehead, even against their will. They could be kidnapped, manipulated, used as puppets by people who want power.
So, from Kim Jong-un's perspective, keeping them secret isn't just about avoiding embarrassment. It's about eliminating potential threats before they become actual threats. But what happens when these children grow up? When they're no longer kids, but adults? Adults who might have their own ideas, their own ambitions, their own connections. That's when they become dangerous. That's when Kim Jong-un has to make a decision. Does he continue to keep them hidden? Does he bring them into the fold? Or does he eliminate them? History suggests he'd choose elimination, because that's the safest option. Dead people can't challenge your power. Dead people can't be used against you. Dead people can't reveal secrets. And that's the terrifying reality these children face. As they get older, they don't become safer. They become more dangerous, more of a liability. And in North Korea, liabilities get eliminated. North Korea isn't the only dictatorship that's dealt with the problem of secret children and potential heirs. Let's look at how other regimes have handled this situation, because it gives us insight into what might happen in North Korea. Take Saddam Hussein in Iraq. He had multiple children, both legitimate and illegitimate. His sons Uday and Qusay were groomed for power. They were brutal, violent, and hated even within Iraq. But they were acknowledged. They were part of the regime. Saddam also had other relationships, other children from mistresses. But these children weren't acknowledged. They were kept quiet. Some reportedly lived normal lives, away from the spotlight. Others were rumored to have been eliminated when they became inconvenient. When Saddam's regime fell in 2003, Uday and Qusay were killed in a shootout with US forces. But what happened to the secret children? Some probably survived. Some probably live quiet lives now, trying to distance themselves from their father's legacy. Or look at the Soviet Union under Stalin. Stalin was paranoid about threats to his power. He had thousands of people executed, including members of his own inner circle. He even had his son Yakov, who was captured by the Germans during World War II, left to die in a POW camp because he refused to negotiate for his release. Stalin valued power over family, over everything. And that's the same mentality we see in North Korea. Or consider the Philippines under Ferdinand Marcos. Marcos had multiple affairs and multiple children outside his marriage. These children were kept secret to maintain the image of a perfect family. Imelda Marcos, his wife, was the picture of elegance and loyalty, but those secret children existed. And when the Marcos regime fell in 1986, some of them came forward.
They claimed their inheritance. They tried to get recognition, but many were rejected, disowned, told they weren't really part of the family. That's what happens when dictatorships fall. The secrets come out, but by then, the damage is done. These children have already lived their entire lives in hiding, in shame, in fear. The pattern is clear. Across different countries, different cultures, different time periods, dictators handle secret children the same way. They hide them, they deny them, and if they become a threat, they eliminate them. North Korea is no different. If anything, the Kim regime is more extreme, more paranoid, more willing to kill family members to maintain power. So the fate of Kim Jong-un's secret children is probably sealed. They'll either live in permanent hiding, constantly afraid, or they'll be eliminated when they're no longer useful, or when they're seen as too dangerous. There's no happy ending here. Not in a dictatorship, not in North Korea. Let's talk about propaganda for a minute. Because in North Korea, propaganda isn't just about controlling the masses. It's about controlling the image of the Kim family. The Kim family is presented as perfect, flawless, divine almost. Kim Il-sung, the founder, is still officially the eternal president, even though he's been dead since 1994. Kim Jong-il was said to have been born on a sacred mountain under a double rainbow. Kim Jong-un is portrayed as a genius, a military mastermind, a loving father to his people. This propaganda is essential to maintaining control, because in North Korea, the Kim family isn't just the government, they're gods, they're worshipped. And if you worship something, you don't question it, you don't rebel against it, you obey. But secret children don't fit into this narrative. They complicate the story. They introduce questions. Why does Kim Jong-un have children he doesn't acknowledge? Why are they hidden? What's wrong with them? These questions undermine the image of perfection. They make the Kim family seem human, flawed, and that's dangerous. So the regime keeps these children secret, not just for security reasons, but for propaganda reasons too, because acknowledging them would mean admitting imperfection. And in North Korea, the Kim family can't be imperfect. This is why Kim Ju-ae, the daughter who has been shown publicly, is presented so carefully. She appears at military events, standing next to her father, dressed in expensive clothes, looking confident and poised. She's being positioned as a potential heir, yes, but more than that, she's being used as a propaganda tool. She's proof that Kim Jong-un has a perfect family, a beautiful daughter who will carry on the legacy. She reinforces the narrative of the Kim dynasty as powerful, legitimate, and eternal. But the other children, the secret ones, they can't serve that purpose. So they're hidden, erased from the official story, made to not exist in the public consciousness. And that's another reason why their lives suck. Because they're not just hidden for their safety, they're hidden because their existence contradicts the propaganda. They're inconvenient truths that have to be swept under the rug. Some of the most valuable information we have about North Korea comes from defectors, people who escaped and were willing to talk about what life is really like inside the Hermit Kingdom. And some of these defectors have talked about the Kim family's secret children. One defector, a former member of Kim Jong-il's pleasure squad, talked about how she knew women who had children with Kim Jong-il. These children were kept secret. The mothers were told to never speak about them. They were giving money, housing, everything they needed, but in exchange they had to remain silent. She described how these women lived in constant fear. Fear that they'd slip up, say something they shouldn't, and if they did, they'd disappear. Not just them, but their children too. Another defector, a former government official, talked about how there are entire networks dedicated to managing the Kim family's secrets. Teams of people whose job is to monitor these secret children and their mothers to make sure they don't become problems. He said that these children are watched constantly, their movements are tracked, their conversations are monitored, and if there's even a hint that they might become a threat, action is taken immediately. What kind of action? He wouldn't say specifically, but the implication was clear. These children could be eliminated, quietly, permanently, and no one outside the inner circle would ever know. These defector accounts paint a grim picture. They confirm what we already suspected, that Kim Jong-un's secret children live in a prison of fear and secrecy, and that their lives are expendable if the regime decides they're more trouble than they're worth. Of course, we have to take defector accounts with a grain of salt. Some defectors exaggerate, some have their own agendas. But when multiple defectors tell similar stories, when the details line up, it's hard to dismiss them entirely. And the stories about secret children, about the pleasure squads, about the constant surveillance and fear, these stories have been consistent across multiple defectors over many years. So yeah, we can't confirm every detail. We don't know exactly how many secret children there are, or who their mothers are, or where they're being kept. But we know enough to understand that their lives are nothing like what most people would imagine. Being born into one of the most powerful families on Earth sounds like a dream. But in North Korea, for these secret children, it's a nightmare. So what's going to happen to these children? What does the future hold for them? That depends on a lot of factors. It depends on how long Kim Jong-un stays in power. It depends on whether North Korea ever opens up to the outside world. It depends on whether the regime collapses or continues for another generation. Let's look at a few possible scenarios.
Scenario 1. Kim Jong-un remains in power for decades. He continues to rule with an iron fist. The secret children remain secret. They live their entire lives in hiding, never acknowledged, never free. And when they die, no one outside the regime ever knows they existed. This is probably the most likely scenario in the short term, because Kim Jong-un seems firmly in control. He's consolidated power, he's eliminated rivals, and there's no immediate threat to his rule. Scenario 2. Kim Jong-un dies or is overthrown, and there's a power struggle. Different factions within the regime fight for control. And in that chaos, the secret children become valuable. They're used as pawns. Maybe one of them is propped up as a puppet leader by a rival faction. Maybe they're all eliminated to prevent them from being used that way. This is a real possibility, because when dictators fall, there's always a power vacuum. And in that vacuum, anything can happen. Scenario 3. The North Korean regime collapses entirely, either through internal revolt, external pressure, or economic collapse. The country opens up, and suddenly all the secrets come out. The secret children are revealed, they step forward, they tell their stories. This would be the best-case scenario for these children, because it would mean freedom. It would mean they could finally live normal lives, finally be acknowledged, finally escape the fear and secrecy. But this scenario seems unlikely in the near future. North Korea has survived for over 70 years despite predictions of collapse. They've endured famine, sanctions, international isolation, and they're still here. The regime is resilient. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. Scenario 4. Kim Jong-un decides to acknowledge these children later in life. Maybe when Kim Ju-ae is firmly established as the heir. Maybe when he feels secure enough that the other children aren't threats. Maybe he brings them into the fold, gives them positions, makes them part of the regime. This seems unlikely too, because it would open up too many questions. Why were they secret for so long? Who are their mothers? It would create a propaganda nightmare, so it's easier to just keep them hidden. The sad reality is that these children probably don't have a good future ahead of them. Best case, they live their entire lives in comfortable but restrictive secrecy. Worst case, they're eliminated when they become inconvenient. There's no fairy tale ending here, no happy resolution, just the grim reality of life in a dictatorship. This whole situation raises some serious moral questions, questions that don't have easy answers. First, should the international community care about these secret children? They're not publicly known. They're not asking for help. They might not even know they need help. But they're human beings living in a terrible situation. Do we have a responsibility to try to help them? The problem is, how do you help them? You can't exactly send in a rescue team. You can't negotiate for their release, because officially they don't exist. You can't even apply public pressure, because bringing attention to them might make their situation worse. Second, what responsibility do other countries have to provide refuge to people who escape from North Korea, including potential members of the Kim family? If one of these secret children somehow managed to escape, should they be given asylum, or should they be rejected because of who their father is? This actually happened with Kim Jong-nam's family.
After he was assassinated, his family went into hiding. His son, Kim Han-sol, appeared in a video asking for protection. Some reports say he's now under the protection of Western intelligence agencies, but it's all very secretive. So there's precedent for protecting members of the Kim family who escape or are in danger. But it's complicated, because these people have access to valuable intelligence. They know things about the regime, and that makes them both valuable and dangerous. Third, what about the mothers of these secret children? Do they deserve protection, sympathy, or are they complicit in the regime's crimes? This is a tough one, because on one hand, these women might be victims. They might have been forced into relationships with Kim Jong-un. They might have no choice but to go along with keeping their children secret. But on the other hand, they're living comfortable lives while the rest of North Korea starves. They're benefiting from the regime. They're part of the system that oppresses millions of people.
So where's the line? When are you a victim and when are you complicit? It's not black and white, and that makes it really hard to know how to think about these women and their children. Fourth, and maybe most importantly, is it wrong to even talk about these secret children? By discussing them, by speculating about who they are and where they are we putting them in more danger? This is a real concern, because if the North Korean regime thinks that information about these children is leaking, they might crack down even harder. They might eliminate people they think are talking. They might do something to the children themselves to prevent more information from getting out. So there's an ethical dilemma here. Do we shine a light on this situation to raise awareness and maybe eventually help these children? Or do we stay quiet to avoid making things worse for them? I don't have an answer to that, but it's something worth thinking about. Here's the cold, hard reality that we need to face. These children are trapped, completely trapped, and there's probably no way out for them. They're trapped by their birth, by the family they were born into, by a father who sees them as potential threats rather than beloved children. They're trapped by geography. North Korea is one of the most isolated countries on Earth. You can't just leave. The borders are sealed. If you try to escape, you'll be shot or caught and sent to a labor camp. And these children, with their high-profile connections, would be watched even more closely than regular citizens. They're trapped by secrecy. Because they're secret, they have no voice, no way to ask for help, no way to even let the world know they exist. They're invisible, and invisible people are easy to forget, easy to ignore, easy to eliminate. They're trapped by fear. Even if they wanted to rebel, to escape, to speak out, the fear would stop them, because they know what happens to people who cross Kim Jong-un. They've probably been told stories, shown examples, made to understand that disobedience means death. And they're trapped by the system. The entire North Korean system is designed to prevent exactly the kind of escape or rebellion that would free them. Informants everywhere, surveillance everywhere, punishment for entire families if one person steps out of line. These children have no good options. They can stay hidden and live in fear, or they can try to escape and probably die trying, or they can wait and hope that someday, somehow, things will change. But things probably won't change, not in their lifetimes. North Korea has been the same for over 70 years, 3 generations of Kim rule, 3 generations of oppression, 3 generations of secrets and lies and fear. So these children will probably live and die without ever experiencing freedom, without ever being acknowledged, without ever living a normal life. And that's the saddest part of this whole story. These are innocent children. They didn't choose to be born into this family. They didn't choose this life, but they're stuck with it, and there's nothing they can do about it. So that's why it sucks to be Kim Jong-un's secret children. Not because they lack material wealth, not because they don't have access to good food or education or luxury, but because they lack the things that really matter. They lack freedom. They lack identity. They lack security. They lack the basic human right to exist openly and honestly without fear. They're born into one of the most powerful families on Earth, but that power doesn't protect them. It endangers them. Because in the Kim dynasty, family members aren't loved, they're managed, they're controlled. And if they become inconvenient, they're eliminated. These children live every day knowing that their father, the man who's supposed to protect them, might one day decide they're a threat. And when that happens, there's no court,
No trial, no appeal, just disappearance. They grow up without ever being able to be themselves. They can't make friends freely, can't pursue their own interests, can't dream about their futures. Because they don't really have futures. Not independent ones, anyway.
They're prisoners in golden cages, secrets that must be kept, problems that might need solving. And the worst part? The world doesn't even know they exist. There's no international pressure to help them, no human rights organizations advocating for them, no media attention shining a light on their situation. They're alone, completely alone, with no hope of rescue, no hope of escape, no hope of anything better. That's why being Kim Jong-un's secret child is one of the worst positions you could possibly be born into, because you have everything except the things that make life worth living. Freedom, identity, safety, love. You're not a person. You're a secret, a liability, a potential threat to be managed or eliminated. And that's no way to live. This story isn't just about North Korea. It's about what happens when power becomes more important than people, when maintaining control matters more than protecting your own children, when fear replaces love. It's a reminder that wealth and power don't guarantee happiness, that sometimes the people who seem to have everything actually have nothing. And it's a reminder that there are people suffering in ways we can barely imagine, hidden away, forgotten, with no voice and no hope. These children exist, they're real, and they're living a nightmare that most of us couldn't survive. So the next time you hear about North Korea, remember them. Remember the invisible children, the ones who were born into the wrong family, at the wrong time, in the wrong country. Remember that behind the propaganda, behind the military parades, behind the nuclear threats, there are real people suffering, not just the general population, but even members of the ruling family itself. Because in North Korea, nobody is safe. Not even Kim Jong-un's own children. Hit subscribe to see more stories the world tries to hide.